Hi everyone. Before we start the main part of the show, me and Neil just wanted to quickly share our thoughts and feelings in relation to Damar Hamlin, obviously seriously injured in an accident during the Bills-Bengals game on Monday night. Finding out today, good news that he has woken and started to speak, which is fantastic stuff. Obviously a long way to go. Our thoughts are with him and hope he's okay. Hope he comes through this and hope he can live a long and fruitful life. What I will say before I let Neil add some words is Damar Hamlin has a toy drive, which you'll be able to find on the internet. Somewhere in the region of $7 million has been raised on that now. If you have the available funds to do so, please do. Worthy cause and something that we should look into and assist with wherever we can. I mean, Neil, have you got any particular thoughts on Damar Hamlin before we start the show?
I've nothing really specific to add. Obviously, it is wonderful that he seems to be taking the first steps towards recovery. Obviously, that's the main priority, is that he's going to pull through, as it were. I think we are fortunate that we tend to record later in the week, because I know an awful lot of podcasts, certainly the ones that I listen to, they have not recorded this week because they're usually Tuesday or Monday night, and they just didn't feel it was appropriate. It didn't feel like the moment was right that people are going to be listening to fantasy football or things of that ilk. So while I don't think that, I'm sure that his family and friends aren't exactly used to tuning in to listen to two Scouse idiots talk about the NFL, we can be something of a release. It was frightening. I didn't watch it live. I was catching up when I woke up in the morning. So obviously it seemed a horrific situation. The toy drive and things like that, the way people have reacted, the way that the NFL community has come together has been quite heartwarming. I would encourage anyone who has not to read Kevin Clark's piece in The Ringer, and also friend of the show Denny Carter's piece on NBC Sports Edge, that both go more into how this moment sort of brought out the humanity of the NFL watching audience, because we're all guilty of it. We, especially those who spend a lot of time in talking about fantasy football, there is a dehumanization of these players playing a ridiculously violent sport. And we've seen how some people take it too far with the abuse that players will get on Twitter for not scoring fantasy points. It's a churner, the NFL. It spits up, it chews out these players. But they are still human beings. And, it's a unwelcome reminder as the violent nature of the sport, and also the how fragile human life can be, and we don't like our pleasant pastimes to remind us of these things, but unfortunately this week it did. So best wishes to Damar, and hopefully the road to recovery will be a long one, but it will be a fruitful and successful one.
Excellent. Agree with you, Neil. Let's get on with the show.
It's time! It's time! You like that? You like that? Woo!
It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mainz and Dutts. I'm your host, Mainz, and my colleague in a danger zone in Rainford. It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
All I'm asking is for maybe 2 or 3 hours where it doesn't bloody rain.
Can I suggest one thing to do that? And that's moving away from what my wife would describe as the north.
It's just... I don't know what to say. We have that, the way the Eskimos have, 27 different types of words for snow?
Yep.
There is Star Trek lore. The Ferengi race, their home planet of Ferenginar, rains all the time. And they have, I think it's 57 different types of rain. I feel like I've seen at least 16 different types this week. And I'm sick to the teeth of it. It's not as if I want to go out in me shorts. It's January, I know, but I just don't want it to rain.
Do you know what I love about that is that knowing you and life and whatever, I've heard of the word Ferengi, and I had absolutely no idea what planet they were from until you said it, and I nearly burst out laughing because that's an hilarious name. Enough of that, because four listeners is enough. When some of them listen to Trekkers, it'll go down to one. Main's events this week will look at the Hall of Fame numbers and see where we would go, give you some of our ideas. We're going to review our preview predictions to show that one of us was really good this year and one of us was not as good. We're going to get Fantasy Darling and Fantasy Losers from last week, and then Neil is going to give us his Fantasy Darlings and Fantasy Losers for the whole entire fantasy season. As someone who had Kirk Cousins in a Dynasty final matchup, it best be that clown. And then we will give you some fancy predictions bound to go wrong and a prediction for week 18. Not fancy related, just a prediction in general. Let's get on with the show and let's get on with the main event.
Time now for the main event.
So Neil, Hall of Fame came out on yesterday. I'll put back with the Damar Hamlin news, but came out 15 names as always in the original long list. And what I noticed before we get into the names is how this is right in the Mainz and Dutts watching NFL sweet spot of professional football players. Like there are in the past and we've seen names which we've been aware of, obviously because they are Hall of Fame talents, but some of them you especially will not have seen. But every single one of these players that we have now are players that we will have seen, and that is cool because you can have much more context in relation to whether you think they're Hall of Famers or not.
Yeah, as I say, these are players that we've seen, but most of them we've seen drafted, we've seen play out, and now we've seen 5 years without them. So we're starting to get into these classes now where, as I say, we can sit there and say, well, yeah, he was the best player I've seen of his type throughout his whole career and whatnot, as opposed to just like, yeah, but his numbers look great.
Let's give you the names first. Joe Thomas, Darrell Revis, Dwight Freeney, Jared Allen, Willie Anderson, Rondé Barber, one of your favourites, Devin Hester, Torrey Holt, Andre Johnson, Zach Thomas, DeMarcus Ware, Reggie Wayne, Patrick Willis, and Darren Woodson. Neil, I'm interested. 5 will get in, but I'm interested if you could pick 3 for this year, who would you pick off those lists?
Well, we've talked in the past about, some people use the argument of can you tell the story of pro football without mentioning this player? Mm-hmm. I think that's a little bit spotty, but one of the players who immediately jumps out on this, he was a shut-down corner in an age where the league started saying, we don't want shut-down corners. We want wide open offense. We don't want these cornerbacks erasing half the field. Well, unfortunately, you got one in Darrell Revis. I think it's 2009 season is one of the most dominant performances by a defensive player ever. He literally, you were playing with 10 men if you were playing against the Jets defense when Darrell Revis was there. Because, there was no point thrown to his side, because to do so would be embracing epic levels of go around and find out. So, for me, he gets in straight away. I would like to see Devin Hester in, because special teams is a maligned aspect of football. Kickoffs now are largely pointless. It's a dangerous play. It's a pointless play that pretty much usually is just going to lead to 25 yards and an injury. But Devin Hester made it cool. He made it exciting. And, there was no one who did it better than Devin Hester. And I don't mean that just in the time I've been watching. I mean, all time. He owns the records. There were he was one of the first, one of the true greats of don't punt it to him. But people still did. The third one, I was torn between Joe Thomas, who was exceptional at what he did. You know, the durability, the high level of performance. It's just the fact that, in my opinion, he's sort of the poster boy for, we say left tackle is vital, but he never did anything. His teams never got anywhere. He never went to the playoffs, never won a postseason game. So, but that doesn't make his contribution any less valid. But the one player of that I'd like to see, and again, it was a short career, but it was a dominant career, and that's Patrick Willis.
Yeah, agreed.
Again, the middle linebacker, it used to be that was the captain of the defense. It probably isn't anymore, because the middle linebacker is one of the first players you take off when you go into sub, nickel and dime. But Patrick Willis was a tackling machine. He could cover tight ends in the passing game, and he could rush the passer when he had to. And, he just got a very bad injury when he still could have had 2, 3, maybe 4, 5 more years of high-level play. But we saw with Calvin Johnson, the league and the Hall now, they're not just saying, no, you need to have a 15-year career. They will look a bit more favourably on the 7 to 9 year range. So they're the three that I would like to see go in. And I will just say, Rondé Barber gets a short end of the stick here because he deserves serious consideration. His numbers stack up as well as anyone. He's just unfortunate that he played a lot of his time as a nickel corner. He was a bloody good one, but when he was playing, the nickel corner was underappreciated.
I think it should also be noted that Neil absolutely despises Rondé Barber and everything he stands for, based on his Philadelphia versus Tampa Bay weird rivalry that happened early 2000s.
It was a weird rivalry when you think about it.
It was, and the America's game of Tampa Bay winning the Super Bowl is based solely around winning against Philadelphia, which is cool, but it's very strange. If you haven't watched those America's games, stop what you're doing and go and watch them all. As I said, I lost my dynasty matchup this week. I will, if I win next year or in years to come, and I have an America's game, I will treat it like the Indianapolis Colts or the Baltimore Colts did after they'd lost Super Bowl III and then won Super Bowl V. And basically the whole America's game is about how they lost Super Bowl III. I think Devin, they say it at the end, that it didn't make up for it. I think Devin Hester's a great shout. It's an interesting conversation about positions in the league. So if your Hall of Famer is the best player at a position in the league for however many years it was, then it makes sense, right? The question is kick returner a position? Because he was drafted as a cornerback. However, on the ESPN thing, he's seen as wide receiver returner. But then you do look, and he's like, it's not like he didn't do anything in those games. 20 total return touchdowns, 14 punt returns. This guy went to the house. I think he's an amazing player. I think if I picked another one, it would be DeMarcus Ware. Defensive end, outside linebacker, wonderful career. First in Dallas and then in Denver, and then won the Super Bowl and dominated. It's one of those interesting ones, right? Where it became Peyton Manning's team at a certain point, but DeMarcus Ware was on the other side, and they were super cool. I always had a soft spot for Reggie Wayne. I always preferred him to Marvin Harrison. Reggie Wayne is the Steve Young in the Jerry Rice, Joe Montana, Steve Young triangle, in that people will tell you that the greatest reception or pass could be argued is Montana to Rice, and Young threw it to Rice hundreds more times for a lot more touchdowns. I love Manning to Wayne more than I loved Manning to Harrison. I don't know why, I just did. And I think I would pick, if I could, I'd pick Ware, I'd pick Wayne, and I'd probably pick Darrelle Revis. I think in the F about and find out, there's a obviously you'll know this, and I don't mean to bring it up in that context, but no one threw at Nnamdi Asomugha when he played for the Oakland Raiders. But then when he went to Philadelphia, it didn't work because he changed scheme and he changed the way he played, and people did throw at him, and he wasn't very good in that situation. You know, Darrell played for numerous teams under numerous kind of schemes, and it did work. And he was great for the Jets, and he was great for the Pats, and he won the Super Bowl. And yeah, I think he was in the All 2000 team. So yeah, I go with Darrell Revis. I go with DeMarcus Ware, and I go with Reggie Wayne.
See, another player, of course, that I expected you to actually advocate stronger, and he has something in common with Reggie Wayne, I believe. That being the U. I thought you'd go harder with Andre Johnson, but I worry that Johnson's going to be, if he does get in, and certainly his numbers suggest he should, but if he does get in, it's going to be a case of people are going to have to say, look at the collection of Costco night shift managers he had at quarterback while he put up these numbers.
Andre Johnson is an amazing player, but we're only picking 3. Neither of us picked Joe Thomas, who I think is a first ballot. I struggle to pick Joe Thomas because I'm not very good at saying whether an offensive lineman's good or not. Joe Thomas was amazing, but his teams were still garbage. That wasn't Joe Thomas's fault, but that makes it tougher for me. But
just whatever they do, whoever they put in, they're all well deserving. And if Don Coryell doesn't go in as a seniors, I'm not interested anymore.
I think there's a big chance he does this year, though, Neil, in the senior selection. Let's get on with the next bit and talk about review of our preview predictions, see how we did. We did all the picks for the divisions. We did some wild cards. We did a Super Bowl matchup. Worst team in the league. MVP, Coach of the Year, first coach fired, one bowl prediction, and one bowl fancy prediction. AFC North, Neil, we both picked the Ravens. I'm going to ask the question on the show to try and give you an answer because I texted to you and you refused to answer it. Lamar Jackson is still not playing. When does the Lamar Jackson situation stop being an injury and start being a holding?
I mean, it's hard to say. I'm not a doctor. I don't have access to his medical report. I don't look at the practice. All I know is Lamar Jackson is going to make a shit ton of money playing quarterback for someone in 2023. If it's not the Ravens, and I implore you, you probably should make it the Ravens, but give him some actual weapons, not DeMarcus Robinson and Deshaun Jackson in 2023. He's going to make a ton of money. I saw somebody said, trade him away, and with the pick you get, take Anthony Richardson, which is the ultimate, the boat is a boat, but the box could be anything. It could even be a boat.
And it's a boat, but bigger.
Yeah. And that's just so we have an established player who has had an MVP season, but let's take the black box prospect with the first round pick, and we won't give him any weapons either. And it's just this merry-go-round needs to stop.
We know what Anthony Richardson looks like with no weapons. It's the Florida Gators, and it's not very good. We both picked the Bills. I think that was logical. We both picked the Colts, which was logical, and a complete and utter cluster. I think, that was a disaster, and I thought there was more in the legs on Matt Ryan. I thought Jonathan Taylor would be fit and firing. You advocated strongly for Michael Pittman, and it never worked, and the offensive line was rubbish. As Thomas Willoughby said yesterday on the touchdown review, Matt Ryan left the team with no offensive line, no weapons, to go to a team with no offensive line, no running game, and no weapons. Not really what he'd signed up for, but there you go. You were smart, Neil, because you've been watching the NFL for 20 years, and for most of them, for 19 of those 20 years, Andy Reid's been good at coaching. I decided to think that someone would be better than him, and not only would it be someone, it'd be a team called the Chargers, which is ludicrous, really, when you think about it. Although the Chargers have done well this year, the thought that was going to happen is beyond repute.
You chose poorly.
I did. On the NFC side, you correctly, for the first time ever, went with the Vikings and got that right by, one score game at a time. I picked the Packers, which 5 weeks ago looked even stupider, but now looks like a playoff team. And we both picked the Eagles. I think I made you. We both picked the Bucks. Go us.
Eagles aren't confirmed yet.
Get Vegas suggests otherwise. If we want to play that game,
Well, they don't play it on craps tables. They play it on football pitches.
They don't. But Vegas don't build small houses in the middle of Rainford. They build 1,000-room hotels based on the money of them getting -14.
True, but the Eagles to clinch it will have to play in a field that is soaked in the urine after they piss the bed against the Saints. So let's factor that in.
Yeah, we all know why that happened, though. Although no one other than me and you will ever know that, and we won't discuss it. In the NFC West, Neil, you picked the Rams. Just one of the great Super Bowl hangovers, as it was described to me. This is one of those hangovers where you're still out at 6:30, and then you check your phone, and your boss has asked you to come in at 9 o'clock on the Sunday, and you're like, I forgot I said I might be able to come in, and you're still hammered and in, your jeans and shirt.
The worst title defense since Tyson took on Buster Douglas.
Nice. I picked the 49ers. Go me. In terms of the wild card, I picked Chiefs, Bengals, and Raiders in the AFC. Raiders is a bit silly, although, if they could hold on to 17-point leads, you never know what might happen. You picked Chargers, Bengals, and Titans, which, correct me if I'm wrong, could literally happen still.
Could still.
Then I picked Rams, Vikings, and Cardinals. The less about that, the better. You picked Cowboys, Packers, and 49ers, which, again, is pretty special. We both picked the Super Bowl matchup. Yours is still in play, as you've got the Buffalo Bills versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I said there was going to be the Battle of LA between the Chargers and the Rams. I need to have a word with past me, because he was drunk. Worst team in the league? I picked the Atlanta Falcons, who have been rubbish, but not the worst team. And you picked the Houston Texans, who right now are the worst team, but could win this week, quite conceivably, and make it the Chicago Bears. MVP, we both picked Josh Allen. I think it's Patrick Mahomes is to lose right now, Neil.
I think so.
Coach of the Year, you picked John Harbaugh. That didn't work. I picked Nick Sirianni, which is logical and is probably top 3, but I would be stunned if it wasn't Brian Daboll now, just by momentum and what have you. First coach fired, I picked Ron Rivera, and you picked Matt Rule, who I believe was the first coach fired, which is absolutely brilliant. Ron Rivera, I think, keeps his job due to the lack of ownership in the Washington situation right now. Okay.
Is there not a danger, though, if he gets fired, he doesn't know this and still turns up to work?
Possible. That doesn't strengthen you. Press conferences like that don't strengthen your case to keep your job, in my opinion. One bold prediction each, Neil. You said Jimmy G would play for someone else. No. He played for the 49ers until, I don't know if you've heard this story before, he got a season-ending injury. My bold prediction would be that the Philadelphia Eagles would be the NFC number 1 seed, still well intact, although, as you said, losing games is becoming frustratingly annoying in that pursuit. You said that Goff would be quarterback 1 fantasy, and he's been quarterback 10, which is still good. I said Allen Robinson would be a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. I'm not sure he's a top 5 fantasy wide receiver on the Los Angeles Rams.
I said Goff would be a quarterback 1, not the quarterback 1.
So he is, because they have been fun, and I will be honest, even though I have love for Pistol Pete, as everyone on this show knows, I hope they get beat by the Rams, and then I hope the Lions beat the Packers, because that would be better for the NFL. But anyway, that's it with the predictions. Neil, absolutely spectacular. Let's not beat around the bush here, and that's why I wanted to do it. Me, not so much. In Battle of LA, get lost, Maisie, idiot. But that's, without further ado, that is it for the main event. Let's get on with Fancy Darling.
Hello, darling.
So, final week of Fancy Darling last week. Fantasy finals, and Neil came up trumps. He said, pick Tyler Conklin. He was tight end 8. 6 catches for 80 yards, no score, 14 points, a win. He said, pick the Lions defense and special teams. They were defense and special teams 5, 16 points, another win. Finishes overall on the season 14 and 17, so 45% strike rate. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Neil, people have won their fantasy seasons now, so let us know who you believe has helped them to that by giving us a group of fantasy darlings for the overall 2022-23 season.
Well, the players who I think most spectacularly outkicked their ADP in a positive way would be Josh Jacobs, who was the RB22 in ADP. In points per game, he's the RB3. Tony Pollard, RB35, RB7. Your mate, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the wide receiver 22. He's the wide receiver 9. Someone that I was high on and wrote about how he would be a much better investment at his ADP than Allen Robinson. Pretty low bar to clear, but it managed. Chris Godwin was the wide receiver 26. He's the wide receiver 13. Devonta Smith, wide receiver 35, wide receiver 14. And Evan Ingram. Now, granted, a lot of this was helped by one massive performance and then a couple of other ones. But if you took him at tight end 24, he finished as the tight end 7. There's a good chance you didn't take him, but maybe you started streaming him at the right time.
I love him on like he's the business, and I'm glad he's in my dynasty team. That's all I'm saying on the matter. Let's get on with Fancy Loser. Neil said to pick Marquise Brown last week as Fancy Loser. I have him as wide receiver 23, Neil, which sneaks him in as a wide receiver 2 and as a loss. He had 12.1 points, 6 catches for 61 yards. Who have been the fantasy losers of the year? And why is it Kirk Cousins in week 18 against the Packers? 17 even.
If you drafted Kirk Cousins or you have him in your fantasy team, that's a you problem. But for me, the big losers were, the most obvious one is Jonathan Taylor. Because this was the 101. There was a late summer surge of, well, maybe you should take Christian McCaffrey 101. No, we don't trust him. He gets injured. So we'll take Jonathan Taylor instead. He didn't play all the games, which obviously is a factor. But in fantasy points per game, he was only the running back 19. That's not going to pay the bills. Another highly drafted running back was Dalvin Cook, who was the RB6. He was the RB14. Wide receivers who we had high hopes for, Deebo Samuel, wide receiver 7, wide receiver 24. And I say these are points per game. These are not raw fantasy points because Samuel, like others, has been injured and missed time. Michael Pittman, as you said, wide receiver 11, wide receiver 26. There's only one tight end. And if you don't know the name I'm going to say now, you've not been paying attention. But the tight end who was taken 3rd at his position in summer was Kyle Pitts. And in fantasy points per game, he was the tight end 21. I'm not saying that all hope is lost for him, but this season's going to be hard to come back from.
What I would say is he's tight end 21, and there's actually only 10 tight ends in the league. So that is some achievement to be that bad. Bravo, Neil. Just on this, I mean, these are players who will either think, will he bounce back or what have you. Deebo Samuel like, with the exception possibly now of George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey, like, he's just a player who plays for Mike Shanahan, who 1 week may score 40 points and the next 4 weeks score 0, right?
Yeah. Put simply, he's a weapon on a impressive arsenal of weapons. But we've seen in his absence, and this is over the course of 3 seasons now, Brandon Ayuk can play. George Kittle suddenly he's not been a prolific scorer of touchdowns in his career, but as soon as Brock Purdy comes in, he's like, no, I want to, I'm LaDainian Tomlinson. I'll score all the touchdowns. It's weird, but Debo, he got the big money deal. I just don't think he's ever going to be the fancy superstar he was in 2021 because I don't think he's going to get that workload again. He's still a bloody good wide receiver, and as long as he stays healthy, he'll have fantasy days. But he's never going to be. I don't think he's ever going to be a full-fledged, no doubt, week in, week out wide receiver one again.
Good call, Neil. Let's get on with fancy predictions. Bound to go wrong. I said that Tyler Algier would be a top 3 running back as they were playing the Falcons, who are garbage, were playing the even worse Arizona Cardinals, and they get 25 plus points. He was running back 12. He got 20 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown and 1 catch for 12 yards, 16.5 points. However, if you add him and Cordero Patterson together, you would have wide receiver one, so if they wouldn't split that. But, you always need to give that 32-year-old on an expiring contract all the carries, to find out what you have in him. Oh, wait. I am bored of that FedEx dude, by the way. Like, he's on the no-go zone when it comes to fantasy. He's a pain in my arse. You said, speaking of pains in your arse, you said Travis Etienne would be running back 1. He was running back 5. He had 9 carries for 108 yards and a touchdown and 3 catches for 32 yards. That's 23 points. And you're like, that's a good score, isn't it? Yeah, it is. It is. He didn't play the second half. Is this something we need to be careful about when picking teams in week 17 going forward? Is this something that's going to happen more? That, like, you'll be able to kind of... There's going to be more rest situations later on in the season where it just used to be the last game. Now we're talking 2 games. Like, let's rest them because we've got a more important game in week 18. By the way, they've done the schedule.
We know that the NFL wants parity. If they ever achieve the goal of parity and the league truly does become a 9-8, 8-9 league, then that means games are going to be competitive all the way to week 18. It's not going to happen overnight if it ever does happen. It's just one of those, unfortunately. Let's be honest, it happened when there were 17 weeks. Sometimes in week 16, especially if a team had clinched. I mean, I can remember people saying, back in 2004, people complaining that because the Eagles had clinched so early, Brian Westbrook didn't play the last 3 weeks. Well, Westbrook got teams to the fantasy, the Super Bowl, got into the playoffs, and then he doesn't play. It's an occupational hazard. Football happens. This is why, you just need to take the risk that if he doesn't play a full allotment of snaps, he'll make the bloody most of what he does get. And Travis Etienne did.
Yeah. My prediction this week in non-fancy related is that I believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to make the playoffs. For that to happen, the Bills have to beat the Patriots and the Jets have to beat the Dolphins. It's not, outrageous, but I see it happening, and then the Steelers beat the Browns. So I believe in a kind of fancy, in a prediction this week that's bound to go wrong. I'm picking 2 teams to lose and 1 to win, and the Pittsburgh Steelers to be in the playoffs. You got one, Neil?
Yeah, mine is. I think for some bizarre reason, the Vegas Raiders are spunky on offense, and they're going to keep in the game against the Chiefs, and that will mean the Chiefs have to stay true to who they are and keep throwing, and that will give Patrick Mahomes the chance to pass for enough yards to set the single season yardage record.
Can you believe how underreported that? Like, I saw that randomly in the depths of a tweet by Pete Schrager in relation to a conversation he'd had in Good Morning Football. He was like, Patrick Mahomes needs like 430 yards to break the passing record, and I was like, how do I not know that?
And he's got 40 touchdown passes this season. To who? Who are you throwing them to? Kelsey and McKinnon can't have caught them all, surely.
It's crazy. It's crazy, Neil. Crazy. Excellent stuff. That is it for us for the regular season. Playoffs upon us. Obviously, we'll change the format, give some more conversations about the games. It should be fun. Looking forward to it. Don't tell the wives that it's Saturday and Sunday. You keep that to yourselves, otherwise you're getting yourself in all kinds of trouble. But then do say that you did tell them when it starts. Neil, before we're back next week, where can people catch you?
Find me on Twitter at @indutton13. Obviously, in the news with the regular season finished, my regular articles have gone. The tight end report, that's been shut down. I'll have my final pace of play report for Player Profiler next week. That will encompass the whole of the regular season. Super Bowl odds tracker for number 5, that will go through the season. Don't forget to go out and buy the latest edition of the Gridiron magazine featuring my weekend in Munich.
Fantastic stuff. I'm at Mainz7. Come by me at waxing_lyrical. I did the touchdown review yesterday. It is nearly, Neil, Matt Kelly-esque long, 1 hour, 25 minutes. We talk Cotton Bowl and Sun Bowl as Joe and Callum went to those games. Spectacular stuff. I tried to understand from Callum how easy it would be for the Washington Commanders to get Caleb Williams as their quarterback. It seems difficult. We also talked predictions that we did during the season, similar to this, and then give our picks, which I am winning, and I'm trying to hold on. Although my upset special this week is the Broncos to beat the Chargers, so we'll see how well that goes. This is it for this week. Enjoy week 18. I hope you've enjoyed the season. I know we have. We will be back again next week to talk playoffs. Until then, these top guys are out.